Assalamu alaikum. We are about to start the month of Ramadan, and I pray that this month is a month of healing, a time of coming closer to our Lord and spending time with Quran and our community and time in prayer, and a time of just recentering ourselves around our worship, around our faith. And I wanted to share with you the story of my very first Ramadan. So I was a very new Muslim, and I'd only been Muslim for a couple of months. And everybody kept telling me how Ramadan was such a special month and it was going to make me feel different and I was going to, really grow so much as a Muslim. And then Ramadan came, and first of all, I was alone. I didn't have anyone else that was Muslim within my house. I didn't have family there. And I lived quite far away from the mosque. So the first thing was that there was a struggle involved, and I was struggling to really feel Ramadan because I was also going to university at the same time. And I remember in those first days really struggling and reflecting on the fact that everybody said it was going to be so different, but it wasn't feeling different, and what was wrong with me, and why couldn't I engage with the month in the way that everybody said I would. And in the early mornings of suhoor, I decided I would go to the mosque so I wouldn't be alone. I would pray my morning prayer there, and I would eat suhoor there because they used to serve suhoor at the mosque. So early in the morning, I got in my car and I drove to the mosque, which was about 20 minutes away from my house. And at first I was the only woman there, and then eventually this elderly woman came, and she was the only other person on the women's side of the masjid. And what happened was every morning we met there and we started to pray together. And she didn't speak English and I didn't speak her language, and we just stood beside each other and we would pray together following the prayer. And then eventually we started to bring food and share food together, and we didn't have conversation. We just sat in community with each other. We just prayed together. And then eventually this friendship formed. And there were mornings that I didn't want to go to the masjid. I felt too tired. It felt too far away. But I didn't want to leave her. I wanted to go because how could I leave this elderly auntie that maybe she was waiting for me? And so she was my support system. She was the community that I had been waiting for. I had been longing for somebody to help motivate me in the days of Ramadan. And she became that person to me. And so I don't remember much about my first Ramadan in terms of fasting or what I learned in terms of even reading the Quran in that month, but I do remember her. And I remember that she was an answer to dua. I remember that I had prayed for community. I had prayed for somebody to go through the month with. And Allah sent me this woman that I couldn't even speak to, but she was a companion of my heart and just a sister in Islam. And this story is one that's so special to me because she is somebody that now, even 17 years later, I still make dua for. And sometimes we have large expectations of ourselves or what something may be, and it doesn't happen the way that we expect it to. But one thing that I've really learned about Ramadan, and especially from that month, my very first Ramadan, was that Ramadan will be whatever we make it, whatever effort we put in. So of course, dua is important, but effort is equally important. And if there's something that we want to get out of Ramadan, we have to put in the effort. When I was waiting for Ramadan to change me, but I wasn't going anywhere, I wasn't putting myself in community, nothing was changing. But when I actually went to the masjid, when I put in the effort, and when I committed to being there and to, being in congregation with this person, my life was changed by her. And so one of the things that it's a tip now that's become something that I always use every Ramadan, and I suggest to my friends and also to my children, is that before Ramadan, we ask ourselves, what is it that we want to change about ourselves? What do we want to get from this Ramadan? And you can say it's kind of goals, but I don't necessarily mean just like, okay, well, I want to finish a hatim or I want to read this many juz a day. I mean in terms of at the very start of Ramadan and the very last day, how different do I want to be? What am I going to change in my personality? What am I going to change in terms of how I am as a Muslim? What are my goals? And then how am I going to achieve those? And so I encourage everybody to sit and to reflect and to think about what is it that we want to get out of Ramadan this year. And so for me in my first year, I didn't really know what to expect, but I knew I wanted community. Alhamdulillah, Allah gave me that. And now I ask you as my community, that we remember each other in our du'as. We really contemplate on the fact that this month is a month that we are supposed to come closer to our Lord, spend time with Quran, but we should never come out of Ramadan unchanged. And we should always remember that the companions of the Prophet, may Allah be pleased with them all, used to make dua for 6 months that Allah would accept their Ramadan, and then they used to make dua for 6 months that they would see another Ramadan. So we never know if this is our last Ramadan. We always ask Allah to accept it from us, and that we come out of that month changed. So let's really, inshallah, dedicate whatever effort, whatever du'as, whatever time we have to spending it in terms of becoming a better version of ourselves within the bounds of Islam, within the sight of Allah. And it's always something that I like to reflect on is the fact that the scholars say a sign of an accepted Ramadan is that the worship and the actions that we begin in the month continue in some capacity after Ramadan. So it's really important to set attainable goals to, even if it's something small, to be able to work on that regularly and then always check in. And from my very first month, as I learned the importance of community, find somebody to hold ourselves accountable that we can check in with on a regular basis. So when we get tired halfway through the month, especially with all the other stuff going on in our lives, that we can have that person to encourage us and to motivate us and to make dua for us, that we would continue to push forward and strive in the month. I pray that we all have an accepted Ramadan, that all that it is that we want from Allah is bestowed upon us, but that we put in the effort and that we set our goals and that we come out changed. Assalamu alaikum.